Shalom, everybody. How are you doing? I'm happy to be back. Last Monday night, I was away with my wife up in the northern part of Israel, up in the Galilee. They call it Galil in Hebrew. And we had a wonderful, wonderful time celebrating her birthday a week ago this Monday. So that's why there was no video. And I'm so happy that a lot of people wrote to me and they said, hey, we missed you. We missed you. And I say, thank you so much. I missed you too. I really did. I enjoy these, and thank God many of you enjoy these too. And I'm happy that we're here together today or tonight, depending on where you are, where you're watching. And I appreciate all of you who tune in and who watch, whether you watch the whole time, you watch a few minutes, a couple of minutes, you just tune in to see my beautiful glowing face, whatever moves you. I'm very happy that you're here with us. So today we are looking at chapter 2, Mishnah 1 of Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, Mishnah 1. And we have a very heavy and lengthy teaching from somebody called Rebbe. Rebbe is actually Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. He was the compiler of the entire Mishnah, a great, influential, substantial rabbi in our history. He lived from 121 to 220. I don't mean to say he lived for an hour. I mean from the year 121 to the year 220. He died almost at the age of 100, which is amazing. And he had several teachings in this Mishnah, chapter 2, Mishnah 1. And out of the 4 teachings, I wanted to focus on 3. Now, I have to tell you, there's a good chance we won't finish this Mishnah this time. It's rather lengthy, and there's a lot to say. So let's start. Let's begin at the very beginning, and let's see what Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi had to say. The word HaNasi means the president. He was, in a sense, the president. I'm going to sneeze. The president and the leader of the Jewish people in the 1st and 2nd century. And here's his opening teaching. He says the following: Eizehu derech yeshara. What is the proper path? What is the righteous path? Sheyavor lo ha'adam. What is a righteous path for an individual to go or to take or to follow or to lead him or herself on? So you have a choice of doing different things. You might have a choice where 2 values clash. So what should you do? What path should you choose? So I think it's a very interesting and a very good question. So he says the following: Kol shehi tiferet le'oseha. You want to know the right path to choose? You choose the path that gives glory to the one who is doing it, glory to the one who's choosing the path. The tiferet lo min ha'adam. Not only that, but it also gives glory to the people. Basically, what he means to say, besides the fact that my nose seems to be extremely itchy at this time, and I'm so grateful, he means to say that whatever is good for you and at the same time is good for others, that's the proper path for you to take. So here's an example. You have money and you want to give money away for tzedakah. You want to give it away to charity, to a group, an individual, a family that's very needy. How do you decide how much to give? So one would say, or Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi would say, following his formula, you give what is good for you to give and what is good for others to receive. So what does that mean? It means to say that we try to avoid the extremes. For example, let's say you're very wealthy and you decide that you want to give a lot of your money away, like almost all of it. Well, that's really good for other people, but it's not particularly good for you because you are going to end up poor. Or let's try the other end. You have a lot of money, but you're not going to give away any of it or hardly any of it. So that's good for you because you're going to stay rich, wealthy, but it's not good for others because nobody can benefit from what you have. So Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi is saying that whatever is a good decision for you and a good decision for others, you benefit, they benefit. You benefit by not giving away too much, and they benefit by getting some. That perhaps would be a very good example. So one of the great lessons that he's teaching in a very, very subtle way, when he says, what is the proper path for a person to follow? A very subtle teaching is that we are the bosses of our own lives, in a sense. We ask God for help. Dear God, please help us in this or that. But the bottom line is, whether we are going to be righteous people or we are going to be the biggest hilarious in the world, whether we're going to be the most spiritual, wonderful, giving, kind, compassionate, sensitive people, or whether we're going to be the meanest, the ones that are going to be the stingiest, that is all up to us. So what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is saying, and I think this is very important, and I wonder how many people not believe in this thing, but how many people agree with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, that this is all coming from us. He's saying that our lives are not pre-programmed. He's saying that our lives are not, God is punching our lives into a computer and is making us do everything the way he wants us to do. Our lives are not predestined. Our lives are not pre-programmed. This is according to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. And a great proponent of this idea is Rambam or Maimonides. Maimonides. I will now make Maimonides your Maimonides by teaching you what he said. He said, anybody can be the greatest, most righteous person, or they can be the worst, most rotten individual, and it's up to them. God does not program us to be righteous or evil. This is our choice and our decision. Now, again, there are some philosophers and some individuals who would say, Ilan, I don't believe in that at all. I believe that everything that we do comes from God. Everything that we say comes from God. Every action we take, every behavior comes from God. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi does not believe in that. And Maimonides does not believe in that. We are the bosses of how we are. So another very subtle message of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is that we can either live passively and let things happen, or we can live actively and make things happen. So this is his wording. What is the proper path for a person to choose? So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is saying that we need to be choosers. We need to make choices. We need to make decisions. We need to be strong and decisive. We need to think ahead, plan ahead, be way ahead. And in that sense, we are, again, the bosses of the types of people we ultimately are going to become. So, again, what is the righteous path? It's good for the doer, and it's good for the receivers. That is a very righteous way to do it. And a person has to balance. Judaism is very much against extremes. Oh, why don't you be very, very overly generous? That's not good. Why don't you be overly stingy? That's not good. So, as we've said before, life very often is about striking a balance, finding the middle road, if you will. And this is exactly what Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is talking about. So, that's the very first teaching that he has in chapter 2, Mishnah number 1. And he has another very, very good teaching where he says, V'hevei zahir b'mitzvah kala kivachamura. Be as careful with what you think is a light mitzvah as you would be careful with what you think is a heavy mitzvah. So what would be a heavy mitzvah? A heavy mitzvah might be keeping the laws of Shabbat, keeping the laws of kosher. A heavy mitzvah might be keeping the holidays. These are not easy. We have to plan, we have to prepare. Certain things we can do, certain things we can't do. So he is saying we have to be as careful with what we perceive as light mitzvot, commandments, as we would be careful with what we perceive to be heavy mitzvot. So this is a very interesting teaching that he has, because he's telling us we should not fall into the trap of judging what is a light and what is a heavy mitzvah. meaning that all 613 mitzvot, commandments in the Torah, are all as equally important, even though in our own thinking we may not think so. So I'll give you an example of what we might think of as a light commandment. There is a commandment in the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim, that says that we may not mix wool and linen. Now, there are many reasons for that, not for particularly now. We do not mix wool and linen. So would the average person consider that a light mitzvah or a heavy mitzvah? I'll say it for those people who think it's a light one. It doesn't sound that much of an important mitzvah. Don't mix wool and linen. So one would say, and if I did, is society tanking because I mixed wool and linen in my same jacket, dress, suit, coat, sweater, whatever? And the answer is no, nothing's tanking, but it's one of the 613 commandments. So we have to think of it as equal to what we would consider to be a very, very heavy mitzvah. Here's an example of how little we know about the reward for a mitzvah, how little we know about what's light and what's heavy. Okay, so there is a mitzvah in the Torah that, again, in the book of Deuteronomy, that when you come upon a nest where a mother bird is resting on the eggs, okay? Hopefully she's not resting too heavily. We don't want scrambled eggs, but let's say for some reason or another, you need the eggs, okay? I'm not here to judge who's hungry, whatever, but the Torah says if you need the eggs and the mother bird is sitting on the eggs, what you have to do is you shoo away the mother bird, okay? You shoo away the mother. Shoo. Doesn't mean to take a shoe and, knock the bird. You just shoo it away so that it doesn't see its eggs being taken. Interestingly enough, rarely does the Torah mention a specific reward. The Torah says that when we shoo away the mother bird, our reward is length of days. Now, there happens to be another mitzvah in the Torah that has a similar reward, length of days, and that is kabed et avicha v'yatimecha. Honor your father and your mother. And when you do that, what is the reward? Length of days. So the rabbis point out that shooing away the mother bird, is there anything simpler than that? All you have to do is wave your hand and shoo it away. But honoring your mother and your father, is there anything harder than that? There was one sage in the Talmud who said, thank God, I can't kind of attach myself to this opinion, but one rabbi in the Talmud, one great sage, says, thank God that both of my parents died when I was an infant, because I know I would not have properly been able to honor my parents in the way that the Torah or God wants. He knew that he would fall short of fulfilling that commandment of honoring your father and your mother. So here we have what we would consider the lightest, easiest mitzvah, shoo, bird, and the heaviest one, honoring your father and your mother. And as a matter of fact, the word in Hebrew, kaved et avicha, honor your mother and your father, kaved, it's also the word heavy. Heavy is the honoring of your mother and your father. It's a heavy load. It can be a heavy responsibility. Not all parents are easy. Do I have to tell you? It's not all fantasy land. It's not all glory. And sometimes our parents can get to an age where it's harder and harder to be their parents. So, interestingly enough, the easiest and the hardest both have the same reward, length of days. So this is another thing that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is warning us about, is don't pick and choose mitzvot based on what you think is a light one and what you think is a heavy one, because we really don't know exactly what is the reward for each mitzvah. Here's a parable, okay? The parable is a king asks his staff. He has a large staff. He has large orchard, probably has more than one. But he has his favorite orchard, and he says to his staff, I would like to pay you for tending to all the trees in this orchard. I'm going to pay you handsomely. However, I will pay more for the upkeep of some trees and less for the upkeep of other trees. Now, they have no idea which tree is which. The tending of which tree is going to get them more money and which tree is going to get them less money. They have no idea. But when the king says it in this way, I will pay you more for tending some trees and less for tending others, he pretty much guarantees and assures himself that in this way, all of the trees are going to be tended exceptionally well, because they don't know where the reward is, so they're going to take care of all the trees very, very nicely. So this is what Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi teaches about the value, the worth, the rewards of each commandment, each mitzvah in the Torah. We don't know, so we have to do each one of them enthusiastically. We have to do each one feeling like this is the most important thing that I am doing at this very moment. Whether it's shooing away a mother bird, whether it's not mixing wool and linen, whether it's keeping Shabbat, keeping kosher, keeping the holidays, whatever. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi says we need to think of them all as equally important and not choose what we do based on what we think is less or more important. So I think I told this story once before to you. If not, this will be the first time. And if this is not the first time, it'll be the second time. All I hope is not the third time, if you know what I'm saying. So the story is of a bunch of students who are finishing up their residencies. They're all going to be, God willing, doctors. They finish up their residencies, and now the doctor that's been the head of the residence is announcing that he's going to give them all kinds of exams. Exams on physiology and the body and human anatomy, everything that they need to know to be good, very excellent, capable, trustworthy doctors. And they go through an entire battery of tests. And he says to them, now that all these tests are over, I have one more final exam that I will be giving you next Monday at 12. So come in prepared. There's one more left. Well, what is one more left? They thought they were tested on everything. So now they're restudying very, very hard. All hours of the night, caffeine, all that kind of stuff. Now it comes to Monday, and there they sit at 12 o'clock in the classroom. He passes out the tests face down. And he says, when I count to 3, I'd like you all to turn over the paper, and please take as much time as you need to do this exam. Well, 12 o'clock, he says, 1, 2, 3. What happens? They all turn over their paper, and there's only one question on the paper. And the question is, what is the name of the cleaning lady that is here in the afternoons in our hallways? Now, would anybody have known that that's an important facet to know? Would anybody have imagined that that is something that they should pay attention to? Probably not. And yet, for the head of residency, this was an extremely important thing for these doctors to know. That when you're going to the rooms in the hospitals, when you're visiting patients, when you're dealing with people who are sick, you should acknowledge the other people in the room, nurse this, doctor that. But not only that, you should acknowledge the people who are coming to take care of the rooms and the beds, the people who are bringing in the meals. Say hello, how are you? Nice to see you. How are you feeling? This head of residency felt that all of that is just as important as taking good care of the patients that they're eventually going to see. So I think that's a very beautiful story, and it's very important. This is something I think that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi would appreciate and enjoy. The doctors didn't know what was more important and less important, so they went with what they thought was more important, and in the end, they had no idea what the name of the cleaning lady was, which was important to know. I'm looking at my watch. I think we have about 10 more minutes, which is great. So here's the last teaching in chapter 2, Mishnah number 1. The teaching of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Wow, This is a good one. You're going to want to write this down. He says, Histakel bishlosha devarim, focus, be conscious of three things, ve'ein ata ba lidei aveira. If you focus on these three items, says Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, you will not come to sin. Wow. Do you have your pens, pencils, iPads ready for this? Wow, this is interesting. You will not come to sin if you keep in mind these three things. So here's what they are, because I'm sure you want to know. He says, Da ma lemala mimcha. You have to be aware and conscious of what is above you. So that's only one thing, but that's his umbrella statement. Be conscious of what is above you, and what is above you is three different features or facets, and here they are. Ayin ro'ah. There is an eye that sees everything. Again, above. Know what is above you. There is an eye that sees everything. Number two, ve'ozen shoma'at. There is also an ear that hears everything. And the third thing is v'chol ma'asecha basefer nichtavim. All of your deeds and all of your actions and all of your words are being inscribed and written in a book as these things are happening. As you're talking, as you're saying, as you're doing, everything that you do and say, because there's an eye that sees and an ear that hears, everything is inscribed in a book up in Shamayim, up in heaven. Now, that's not an unusual thought. You know, when we come to the high holidays, we have this teaching and we have this sense that there are three books that are up in heaven. One book is the one for the very righteous. The other book is the one inscribed of the very wicked. And the third book is the in-betweens, the ones who are the Beinonim, the ones who are not here, not there. And those people have 10 days of repentance until Yom Kippur to show their spiritual gifts and then end up in, hopefully, the book of the righteous. So he is saying that everything is written in a book. There is nothing that we do or say that is unnoticed by God. Everything is noticed. The eye, the ear that hears, nothing escapes God. Not our actions, not our words. And says Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, if you keep these things in mind, that there's an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and everything we do is written in a book, you will not come to sin, or you will not easily come to sin, which is a very nice thought. Now, one could ask the question, by the way, whose handwriting is in this book? Whose handwriting is in this book? And our commentators say it's ours. Okay, thank you for not asking me how does that happen? That I say something, do something, and all of a sudden it appears in a book with my handwriting. But Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wants to impress upon us that we can't say at the end of our 120 years, and we look at the book, we can't say, hey, how did this get in here? I didn't do that. And God says, well, it's in your handwriting. So what do you do about that? So again, in the waning minutes of our time today, one could ask the question, if we believe in a God who never forgets, and by the way, we have this notion very often. 4 times a year, we say a prayer called Yizkor. Yizkor, he will remember. It doesn't say Nizkor, we will remember. It says Yizkor, God will remember. We think of God as a rememberer. God remembered Sarah in the book of Breshit, in the book of Genesis. God remembered the enslaved Jewish people when they cried out to him. And it says, and God remembered them, and he started planning for their release out of Egypt. During the high holidays, we have many verses taken from our Bible that remind us that God is a rememberer. So the question we would want to ask is, if God is a rememberer, why is anything written in a book? Does God need the book to remember our deeds, our words, our actions? If he's a rememberer, why does he need a book? I think that's a really good question. And let's end there. No, I have an answer. And the answer is, in our waning minutes, okay? The answer is, an answer given by some of our commentaries, is that the book, God doesn't need to see the book. You know why? Because he's a rememberer, like I just said. Like we call God a rememberer. Is that a great word, by the way? Rememberer. I like that. I'll remember that. Our commentators say, who is going to see the book? It's not God. It's us. At the end of 120 years, we should all live a beautiful and healthy and long life. We will see the book, and it's for us to remember what we did. That's what some of our commentators say. We will see the book in the world to come. God doesn't need to see the book. Another commentator says that what is this book that we keep talking about? That everything is inscribed in the book? One commentator says the book is not an actual book. The book is really our neshama. The book is really our soul. And what we do is inscribed in our soul. If we do good, it adds luster to our soul. And if we don't do so good, if we do badly, it corrodes and dulls our soul. So Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi asks us to think about that. What would you like your soul to go through? Do you want your soul to have added luster? And if you do, think of these three things. God hears everything, sees everything, and everything is written on your soul. Everything is inscribed on your soul. If you want your soul to be corroded and you want your soul to be dulled, keep doing bad things. And that's the way your soul will end up. Bottom line, we're accountable for each word and deed. We're responsible and answerable for each word and deed that we say during our lifetime. I'll just mention this in our last couple of minutes. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, one of the great leaders of German Orthodox Jewry, I think it was in the 1800s, but I stand dissected. It could be 1700s. I think it's 1800s. Here's what he said about our deeds and our actions. He said that the consequences and repercussions of everything we do affects the entire globe. Okay? So I thought if I didn't feed the cat for 5 straight days because I don't like the cat, I thought, well, that's just between me and the cat, or maybe God knows that I didn't feed the cat, or something like that. I like to pull its tail because it's fun for me. Not a nice thing to do, but who knows anything about that? It's just between me and the cat, and otherwise it's just an old tale. And maybe God knows it, but beyond that, so? Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch says, so? What are you kidding me, so? Everything we do, positive and negative, has an effect on the entire universe. So that's, be careful. Handle with care. Universe, handle with care. Everything we do, according to him, has a consequence way beyond that particular act or that particular word. And to close our time right now, Rambam, Maimonides had this to say. He said, the entire world is balanced perfectly between the good and the bad. It's right equally balanced. And whatever any individual in the world says or does next will tip the scales of the universe either in one direction or in the other direction. So if we do good, the scales of the universe tip towards the good. If we do bad, if we do evil things, if we do thoughtless things, the entire world or universe tips towards the bad. So I think we finished this. I thought it would take a little bit more, but well, there is more to say, of course. There's always more to say. But I think Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi has given us, oh my gosh, so much to think about. What's the proper way to proceed with any kind of a decision making? That which is glorious for you and glorious for others. It makes you and others feel equally good and benefited. Be very careful how you judge a mitzvah, because we don't know the rewards of mitzvot, except for maybe a couple. What is light in our eyes, it could be very not light in God's eyes. What is heavy in our eyes could be a little less light in God's eyes. And of course, this last teaching, be very, very careful what you do and what you say, because there's an eye that sees up there, there's an ear that hears up there, and all of our actions are inscribed in either an actual book up in heaven with our own handwriting, or all of our actions affect our neshama. They affect our soul. They either give it greater luster or they corrode it and dull it. And it's all up to us on what we do. Dear friends, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it. In just a few moments, I'm going to look through all of the comments that people were kind enough to leave. And of course, like I do, just ignore them. That's not true. I try very carefully to at least like every comment or respond if somebody needs more of a response. But thank you again for being with me today. God willing, we'll get together again Wednesday for 5 Derech Eretz lessons in the Torah portion, which this week is the portion of Pinchas. So, be well, stay healthy. See you the next time. And again, thank you for joining